Scott, let's get into this with you. I took my eyes off of Bitcoin yesterday, just for the day, and somebody recapped the price action that we saw. At first, I thought the volatility was going away in this trade. Apparently not. Correct, Scott?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think the thing that really got the volatility going recently was this news about Peter Thiel. When that news broke that he had accumulated a ton of cryptocurrency, the moment that news broke, all of these products were getting killed. All of them were getting killed, and they really rallied robustly on that news. Why? Well, he's considered to be a great investor, founded PayPal, stamp of approval from somebody in the mainstream. I think that's really what we saw.
But Scotty, as soon as that came out, what happened the next day? Merrill Lynch came out with a note saying that they're banning all Bitcoin exposure on their platform. So it is a little bit of a tug of war here, but I think the momentum for cryptos is still intact. I know Scott sees things differently right now, but trying to trade this volatility has been challenging, right? I tried shorting it last week. They took me out my stop, and then we went lower. So we are seeing these lower highs right now, but there's volatility and opportunity, but I think the chart wants to back and fill a little bit lower.
Let's take a step back here, because I get this question from investors all the time that want to be in the Bitcoin trade. They're a little scared to do it. If you were talking to somebody who was looking to diversify a little and maybe take some risk with Bitcoin, 5 to 10% of their portfolio, and hold it a little longer term, Scott, is that something that you would suggest just so they have a little piece of it?
No, I wouldn't. It's not an investment. It's no more an investment than when I go out to the racetrack and put $100 on number 3 to win. If you want to trade it because you think Bitcoin has value, then you'll have to explain to me where the value comes from. It doesn't mean it can't go to $100,000 of Bitcoin. It doesn't mean that. But what it means is it's a trading and speculative instrument. It's not an investment.
I'll push back, Jackie. I don't think the number is 5 to 10%. I think that's too high as we're in the first or second inning. But I think that 1 to 2% allows you to get into the game and understand where the top cryptos going out there, Bitcoin being one of them.
All right. Well, we have Tom Lee back, and he says, as a matter of fact, that he thinks Bitcoin could hit 20,000 by mid-2018. So, Tom, explain your thesis here on why this cryptocurrency may see some volatility, but ultimately it's going higher.
Well, I mean, I still think it's pretty early days for investors to really appreciate how much development and actual use cases are being built around Bitcoin and blockchain. So I think the volatility we're seeing is really just a price discovery process. I think those who really sort of dismiss it as, hey, look, there's no tangible value for Bitcoin are really losing some perspective. It's not that different than in the 1990s, someone saying Amazon is worth nothing because they actually don't make money. And as you know, if you look back, that was really the bear case for Amazon throughout most of the 90s and 2000. So we still think Bitcoin is easily, on a long-term basis, the easiest way to look at it is as a replacement or a store of value. And so it's going to, as the millennials discover and generate income, they're going to use it as a replacement for gold. So if it gets 5% of the gold market, that's roughly $50,000, and we think by mid-2018 we're going to be part of the way there, and that's why we get 20,000.
All right, you have a stock market that's on fire right now, Tom. Would you be buying Bitcoin over stocks at this point?
I think you want to make stocks your primary risky asset for most investors, but I think even on a risk-adjusted basis, I think Bitcoin is going to easily outperform the S&P.
Tom, how much higher by the end of the year?
I think, again, Bitcoin price moves, and Bitcoin's, by the way, is not even capturing what's really happening in altcoins and the blockchain. But I think Bitcoin, if it can actually rise close to 30% in just the first half of this year, I think the second half of 2018 will see a move bigger than 30%. So I think Bitcoin is still something you want to own through the middle of the year and through year end.
All right, Jeff, jump in.
I love your work, and you've been absolutely spot on, Tom, so kudos to you for calling this. I have a non-believer, a.k.a. a hater, next to me. What would you say to him and the rest of the community who have not embraced cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, again, I think that the only way for someone to really start to think about the use case and the dynamics of Bitcoin and blockchain is for investors to get involved. So I think whether it means engaging in some of the communities or even buying it outright, I think it would really change one's mind. But again, this is a millennial development, right? This is something that's happened within the last 10 years. And these are the really big opportunities when generational opportunities take place. Remember, it was the internet in the 90s, it was mobile telephones before that, and it was PCs over mainframes. I think that these types of sort of leaps and innovations are the ones that are important to recognize and take advantage of.
All right, let's go to the haters. Scott with a question.
Well, Tom, I have a question. What is the fundamental value of Bitcoin? And let's draw the difference, the distinction between Bitcoin and blockchain, because I think that the analogy between Bitcoin and Amazon is completely wrong. Amazon was building a business that now has billions of customers and hundreds of billions of dollars worth of revenue. And so owners of Amazon get all that cash flow. Now, I think that the much better analogy would be to gold. But what is the fundamental intrinsic value of either Bitcoin or gold, other than a store of value?
Sure. Well, there's an evolution of like what the definition of capital structure is when you look at blockchain, because Bitcoin is supported by the blockchain, which is a decentralized ledger, but it's actually incented and operated by the actual tokens. So that means if you own all 21 million, that's the maximum supply of Bitcoin, you own the blockchain. So in other words, owning Bitcoin is a fractional ownership of this ledger. So it's actually very much like an equity. The reason we don't see that today is that we tend to think of applications and then people who've invested and created it. That's why people look at web and then the applications on top of it. Blockchain's different in the sense that it's essentially converging users and owners because it's using the token itself as a form of payment, but it's also part of the blockchain.
All right, Tom, great to
Tom,
see you.
Let's be really clear, Tom, and look, because Bitcoin does not have a monopoly on blockchain. Anybody can use blockchain technology for anything they want to. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's right. But remember, blockchain's a pretty generic word. I mean, remember, the real key in Bitcoin is it's a proof of work and then there's a hash function. But the proof of work means that the more nodes that are actually doing the mining, the more secure the network is, because it's essentially a proof of work network. Bitcoin is the predominant blockchain out there. You can either measure it by market share or by the number of nodes. It's basically most of the blockchain.
Tom, great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your thoughts on Bitcoin. Jeff, let's talk about Bitcoin futures. Buyer, seller, what are you going to do?
Despite the fact that I'm long-term bullish and I tend to lean into Tom's camp versus the camp to the right of me here, I do want to be a seller on a futures now trade. I'm about $250 away. I think we're in price discovery mode as we see more and more pros come into the market. So I want to be a seller at $15,250. And remember, this is on the CBOE contract, the little one. This is the one coin, not the CME contract, which is a 5-coin contract. And I'm looking for a drop down, $1,500 to test a new low, not quite the old low, but $13,750 is my target. Being mindful, my stop is just $750 higher at $16,000. Let's remember, I did get stopped out on trying this last week because of the volatility.
Scott, what do you think?
I like the trade. I think it's going to be really tough because it is so volatile. Very easy to get stopped out.
It's a tight stop.
Yeah, it's very easy to get stopped. But here's the thing, you could lose a ton of money if you had a really wide stop, and we don't want to do that. I think that the distinction between Bitcoin and blockchain is paramount here. And to say that because of blockchain, Bitcoin is going to do well is a lot like saying because of the internet, pets.com is going to do well. We saw how that worked out.
The global conversation now is all intact from momentum to the upside. There's a finite number of Bitcoin. So if this is the only future to play off right now,
there's no fundamental value, zero fundamental value.
That's a totally different show. But let me just say one other thing. There's a lot of ETFs. There's a lot of products coming out that have to own this future. That is the heavy hand underneath the bid of this market.
Final thing. The risk downside to the downside comes from some sort of event. For example, a hack or another country outlawing it. That's another reason I'd be shorted.
All right, let's go ahead and get the risk reward on this trade. Jeff is selling the CBOE Bitcoin futures $15,250. He's targeting a move down to $13,750, risking $750 to make $1,500 in this trade.